Alright guys, the Marvel series continues. We're getting pretty close. We're at, I think, 2007 now, so let's talk about Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer picks up a couple years after the first one, I think, and it tells a story that Reed and Sue are trying to get married. That is storyline A, and then they kind of throw in the story with the Silver Surfer in there. So let's talk about this movie. So Ioan Gruffudd, however you say his name, is actually pretty good as Reed Richards this time around. He wasn't great in the first one, but he's pretty good now in this one. He's grown a bit as an actor between the 2 years. Jessica Alba is pretty horrible as Sue Storm, again. I would say she's even maybe worse in this one than in the first one. Chris Evans is still great as Johnny Storm. He gets a bit more character this time around, so that's nice. And yet again, Michael Chiklis as the Thing is still the best part of these movies. He has the most heart and emotion to him, and he's really the only character that you can actually kind of say you care about, so yeah. And then we have a new cast member in this movie. You have, or technically two, you got Doug Jones doing the performance, and then Lawrence Fishburne doing the voice of the Silver Surfer. And the Silver Surfer is freaking incredible, guys. The Silver Surfer is probably the best thing in this movie besides the Thing. He's really cool. He doesn't get a ton to do, but when he does, it is amazing. And I will say, the main story involving him and the whole Galactus thing is pretty good until about the final act of the movie, when we find out that Galactus, unlike his comic book counterpart, who's like this giant dude, it's just a big cloud. Unfortunately, I think if they had actually just gone for the weird, wild, campy look of the comic Galactus, this movie would have been way better. Because these movies are already campy. These movies are already kind of the last bit of the campy superhero movies. They could have sprung for the extra campiness, and it would have won over the comic book fans, because you would have gotten to see Galactus in all of his glory. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity. This movie is not nearly as good as the first one, though it is more fun. It's definitely a lot more fun than the first movie, but it's just not as good. It definitely feels more targeted towards kids. I will talk about that later, though. Again, the relationship between Johnny and Ben is just great. Their dynamic is amazing, because you got Ben. Obviously, he and Johnny, they fight a lot. But you can tell, deep down, both of them, they do care about each other. They are friends. You could even go as far as to say they're family, seeing as Fantastic Four is Marvel's first family. That they do care about each other. They just have this brotherly kind of rapport where they don't always get along. They fight, but in the end, they will always have each other's backs. And there's even a great scene in the movie where they're talking about, because the Reed and Sue talk about how they might want to retire from being superheroes so that they can have normal lives. And then Johnny hears this and tells Ben about it, and they're like, "Hey, you always got me, pal. I'll always be here." And that was great. I wanted more of that stuff, because the stuff with Reed and Sue is horrible. The relationship between them is just the worst part of this movie. The storyline involving the wedding is horrible. It's all just pointless and stupid. They could have just gotten married in between movies and then focus up on the main story that you should be telling, the stuff with the Silver Surfer. We don't need this wedding stuff. I will admit the bachelor party scene was funny, but that's it. That's the only thing out of this wedding storyline that's actually good, is that the bachelor party scene. That's it. Pretty much every character in this movie doesn't really have a character. Johnny has a bit of an arc in the movie, but not very much of one. Ben is yet again the only really good character with like an actual emotional center in the movie. The effects, except for the Silver Surfer, aren't that great, but the Silver Surfer was pretty good. I will say the effects haven't aged amazingly in 10 years, but they still look convincing enough that it's not like 90s CGI bad. It's just not great. It's just pretty good. Here's a little rant I have. I absolutely hated that they brought Doctor Doom back. They set up at the end of the first movie that Doctor Doom was still alive, but he has no reason to be in this movie. They could have made Galactus the main villain and just done that. That would have been fine. But no. They had to bring Doctor Doom back because Doctor Doom was in the first movie, but he, like, becomes unfrozen somehow, and he's, like, all scarred and stuff, and then he gets hit with a blast by the Silver Surfer, and then he just heals and turns back into Julian McMahon. Probably because they wanted to cash in on the fact that he has a face, and they didn't want to obscure him with makeup for the whole movie. Who knows? Even having him in the movie was just, again, really stupid. I honestly hated that he was in this movie, because he doesn't add anything. He steals the Silver Surfer's surfboard near the end of the movie, and then the Silver Surfer just does nothing. They could have easily just put the Silver Surfer in that part, made him an antagonist, and it would have been exactly the same. Also, there's this really semi-funny, but also mainly stupid storyline involving Johnny. How he gets touched by the Silver Surfer, and then now his like body is unstable, and if he touches someone, he switches powers with them. And there's a bunch of trying to be comedic scenes involving it, where, you know, he touches Sue and becomes invisible, and then she catches on fire and then turns back to normal, and all her clothes fall off and she's naked. Or, actually, this one was funny. He touches Ben, and Ben turns back to normal, and then Johnny is a rock man, and that scene was pretty funny. But that's about it. Again, and then there's an action sequence at the end where they all touch together, and then Johnny gets all 4 of their powers, and he does end up fighting off Doctor Doom with all, like, a combination of the entire team's powers. That was cool. But everything else involving that whole plot thread was just kind of stupid. And that's the worst, that's the biggest thing I can say about this movie, is that it's kind of stupid. The movie dumbs down a ton of things to make the movie more family-friendly and tames the violence and certain other things as far as securing a PG rating, whereas the first movie was PG-13. And that's the problem, because then you're watching this, you're like, oh, that's rated PG, I can show that to my kids. But in order for them to kind of understand certain story stuff, they would have had to watch the first one, and if it's a parent that's like, I don't want to show my kids a movie that's PG-13 if they're not old enough yet. So then you're kind of backed into a corner if you want them to understand what is going on with certain things in this movie, because then it's like, oh, well, in order to understand this, you would have had to have seen the first movie, but if you had seen the first movie, that movie's PG-13, and I don't want to show my kid a PG-13 movie yet. So, yeah, there's a bit of a problem there, but I do like this movie. I don't hate this movie. There are a lot of stupid, horrible things in this movie, but overall, most of those things are beat out by the good things that are in this movie. the first one is better and still the best Fantastic Four movie, but this one's still pretty good. It's not a horrible movie, not as good as the first, but definitely better than the 2015 one, and I do like it a lot. I'm gonna give Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer a B-. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of Rise of the Silver Surfer. If you've seen it, check out the link to our Patreon in the description below. Thanks for watching. See you later.